All right, so I'm here with Ryan Kirkland, and we are talking today about conflict and how do we deal with conflict. And Ryan creates lots of conflict around the staff, and so we thought there would be nobody better than him to talk about it. Now, anytime you work with musicians and you work in bands and you work with people, there's bound to inevitably be some kind of conflict.
Yeah.
So how do you deal with conflict?
I think when I first think about the idea of talking about conflict, I think of the word honesty. I feel like it can be tough and it can be uncomfortable, but you almost need to step into the uncomfortable and be honest, to be able to say, maybe I'm off here, maybe, be humble. Maybe this is off, maybe this is wrong, but this is where, whether it's someone hurt your feelings or whether it's someone feels left out, this is how I'm feeling, this is why, am I wrong here, asking questions.
Yeah, and I think what you said, the humility of asking questions to find out, like, this is what I'm experiencing,
right?
Am I right about what's going on? Rather than pointing the accusing finger of,
right,
this is what you did,
right?
Here's how I'm feeling.
Yeah,
that helps. That softens the defensiveness of the other person.
Right. Yeah, and I mean the tough part, I guess, is just that you the fallback, I guess, is just that you are going to have to tiptoe around what you really feel, and that's where I say being honest. Be humble, lead with questions, like you're saying. Don't assume, but don't be afraid to really share your heart, to really say, this is really where I'm at, and I'm okay with being wrong about this. I would love to be wrong about this, but this is what I'm getting, and I'd love to just not feel this when I see you.
Yeah, because otherwise we just become fake, and our feelings go underground.
It's still there. It's just passive now.
Yeah, it doesn't go away. Then we do these passive aggressive things.
Right.
That's never good. So, honest confrontation. I think about, whenever I think of confrontation or dealing with issues, especially in the church, I just think about how many people leave churches because they have unresolved issues with somebody in the church that they never addressed, or how many people leave relationships and just drop out of sight because they don't know how to deal with conflict. And my commitment is to help people know how to turn conflict actually into an opportunity to enhance community rather than destroy it. Because when I have a disagreement with you, it gives me the opportunity to say, Ryan, this is what I'm feeling.
Right.
And that gives you the opportunity to be honest about where you're at, and it breaks down walls, and we actually are drawn closer together.
Right. Yeah, I mean, 9 times out of 10, I'm not afraid to have a uncomfortable conversation as long as I know, what I want to say. But 9 times out of 10, what I think in my head is going to happen never happens. I think they're going to lash out. I think they're going to hate me after this. I create this dialogue and this outcome that hasn't even happened yet, but I'm already worked up about it. Yeah. And 9 times out of 10, it's either I don't know where that came from or why you would feel that way. I love you. I'm about whatever,
Yeah. Well, there was just in staff meeting today, one of our staff members said that he had this thing that he thought that he had offended someone, and it kept him up at night.
Yeah.
He was losing sleep over it. And then when he talked to that person, they said, "Oh no," and they weren't offended at all. Yeah. And here he goes wasting a couple of nights of sleep. Yeah. Where if he would have just gone and talked to that person in the beginning, he could have saved that trouble.
Right.
And so I've done that I don't know how many times, and that's why it's just so important to address it.
Right. Yeah.
And that's where the classic passage of Matthew 18 comes in, and Jesus says this. He says, if a brother or sister sins, go and point out the fault just between the two of you, and if they listen to you, you've won them over. But if they will not listen, take 1 or 2 others along, so that the matter may be established by the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. If they still refuse to listen, tell it to the church. If they refuse to listen even to the church, treat them as you would a pagan or a tax collector. And I think people have used that in the past to say, it's kind of a 3 strikes you're out policy. Like, go to them and confront them, and if they don't listen to you, then get some other people so they have ammo and witnesses, and if not, then go tell everybody at church, and then kick them out of the church, and treat them like like you don't even ever talk to them. But that's not how Jesus treated pagans or tax collectors. Like, he was known for hanging out with those people. They maybe weren't considered a brother. Like, it says if a brother or sister sins.
Right.
Okay, so then maybe they're not considered a brother. Maybe you don't have the same close relationship that you have. But when a person doesn't repent or they don't agree with you, that doesn't mean you have to ostracize them from the community.
Yeah, I think, one of the first things that pops out when I, am listening to that, it just is that reiteration of humility, of, this is saying go to a brother or sister and confront them. It's not saying you're right. It's not saying that, you're in the right because you read the Bible and now you can go and tell them what they need to, confess of. It's saying, go to them one-on-one, make it personal and be honest, but you need to go in humility. Is this, I just feel like we need to reiterate that. Like, just because you have the Bible on your side doesn't mean you have the Bible on your side.
Well, the humility of Jesus' other saying where he says, why do you look at the speck in your brother's eye? You don't notice the log in your own eye.
Yeah.
First take the log out of your eye, then you'll see clearly to help take the speck out of your brother's eye.
Every time I hear that, I immediately think of Wayne Fort's painting we have just over here on the other side of this wall.
I should have hung it up behind us. Yeah. There's a great one. You got to see it when you're at church. But that idea of you should try to take the speck out of your brother's eye. It's not a bad thing to go to your brother and try to help him. If you see something, you want to help him. But you got to first look at yourself and recognize where you fall short.
Right.
Because that gives you the credibility and the humility to be able to come to somebody else without judgment, without being condescending.
Yeah.
And to deal with stuff.
Yeah, I mean, always start with yourself. I mean, with me and Monica, she's usually at fault in our arguments. No, I'm usually at fault. No, I feel like the majority of the time where we just have really great conflict resolution is when I'm able to just put down my guard and go, what's her perspective in this? What is she seeing, and what do I need to do differently here? And it's funny because it seems so cliche, but it's so tough to do in the moment. You're worked up, you're angry, you're whatever, and you're going at it, and it's kind of tough to, when they go, you need to recognize that this is what you're doing and this is how it makes me feel. You want to go, and it's tough to go, you're right.
Yeah, and I think the important thing of saying this is how I feel rather than this is what you're doing to make me feel, because nobody can make you feel anything.
Yeah.
It's how I feel. It's just a fact of how I feel. But people can speak into that. I think the key thing I found in conflict resolution, especially in marriage, people fight as if we're fighting each other, as if the other person is the enemy, rather than arguing to solve the problem. Like, here's the problem.
Right.
Let's address the problem, and we'll both be on a team together to figure out the problem.
Yeah.
Anytime we can take conflict and turn it that way, even in confronting a brother about sin, to say, look, you're not the problem. Here, the sin is the problem, and it's separating you from God. It's hurting your fellowship with other people. How can I help you to not be stuck here anymore?
Right.
Like, that's a different approach than, dude, you're screwing up.
Right.
Yeah, and it brings us together as a team to approach the issue rather than as opponents to fight each other.
Something Monica's been doing lately, which is you hate it in the moment because it's a diffuser, but it's needed. But you get into an argument, she always does that. Whoa! I don't want to. This isn't a fight. This is me discussing whatever, and then she makes me go, same team, and I have to go, same team. Nice. And it's this way of and it's cheesy and it's annoying in the moment. You're just like, I'm not gonna high five her, but it's just this way of bringing it back to, this is the issue. Remember this is the issue, and remember we're not the issue.
Yeah.
Even if we're the issue, it's this thing about us.
Well, and even in Ephesians 5, where Paul says, or 6, he says, we wrestle not, our struggle is not against flesh and blood.
Right.
But it's against the principalities and powers and spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. Like, when we recognize, we're on the same team, we're in this because we like each other, because we're brothers, or we're, if you're married, whatever, we're on the team, and it's the enemy. There's an enemy, but it's not you.
Right.
And so if I have an issue with you, I can share it because we're on the same team together, and we're just trying to be better together.
Right. Yeah.
It goes a long way. Well, listen, you need to have a discussion now with your groups. There's a discussion guide there, and if you just stumbled across this video on YouTube, this is part of a series called C3 Connect in Community, and you can get the whole series and the previous one about connecting to Christ at mvclife.com, and you can go there and download the study guides and everything to have a good discussion about it. So enjoy.